The premiere at the Astana Opera was a smashing success. And of course, the reason of phenomenal success of the premiere is love. Overwhelming love.
Скажу точно, это для меня огромный рост.
To tell the truth, this role is an area of huge growth for me as for an actor. Because in Orlando, literally a week ago, I saw myself in some scenes.
И это было для меня как-то очень удивительно и очень, знаете, немного страшно.
And it was quite surprising and a bit scary for me. Because if you come to the performance, you will see how Orlando goes mad.
Он заболевает.
How he becomes ill. In the end, he becomes a schizophrenic. If you read the poem Orlando Furioso, you know he has all the symptoms of schizophrenia. He speaks in different voices, sees various monsters.
Orlando Furioso, an opera by Vivaldi, is as famous as his 4 seasons, and it was performed for the first time in Astana. We will talk about it in the latest episode of Culture Vibe. The premiere at the Astana Opera was a smashing success, and of course, the reason of phenomenal success of the premiere is overwhelming love. Orlando Furioso is a famous work by Italian poet Ludovico Ariosto. One could say that the author's work on the piece was also somewhat frantic. Ariosto wrote and rewrote the poem for 25 years. Orlando's mad love for the willful Angelica developed against an equally mad backdrop. The poem features military battles, knightly adventures, occultism, and even monsters, plus a whole series of other passionate and mad plotlines, by the way. Ariosto's contemporaries did not praise his work. It was generally believed that the piece lacked morality and therefore meaning. Apparently, it was merely entertainment. However, 200 years later, Orlando Furioso deeply touched another Italian, Antonio Vivaldi, to the depth of his soul. Inspired, the composer created the opera of the same name, which eventually became as famous as his 4 seasons. According to some reports, Vivaldi worked on these operas simultaneously, and now, 3 centuries later, Orlando's mad passions flared up on the stage of a Kazakh theater. The premiere turned out to be an unusual event for our theatrical life, because for the first time, we were presented with a baroque opera.
Vivaldi, он очень структурно лаконичный.
Vivaldi is very structurally concise in his musical form. There is nothing superfluous. Vivaldi's music has nothing unnecessary. The recitatives in this opera are particularly interesting. I want to say that Baroque operas are always interesting for their arias and recitatives, because it is the theatrical performance. An aria is usually a few phrases sung, some keywords that a particular character wants to convey. And the recitatives reveal the essence of the character, their suffering, their experiences, and romantic longings.
Романтические томления.
И не все голоса, в общем-то, имеют возможность.
Not all owners of voices in general have the ability for rapid singing, because it is a different singing specification. There must be a physiological predisposition for such singing. I don't want to give specific details right now. Phoniatrists and singers know this. Voices can be agile and not very agile. This depends on the thickness of the singer's vocal cords and physiology.
Толщины связок певца. Да, это физиология. Вообще оперный жанр – это самый поздний жанр из всех.
Of all the art forms, opera is the most recent. Art, architecture, and literature were highly developed at that time, while opera was not. Around 1600s, it began to emerge as being influenced by Greek tragedy traditions.
Значение слова, то есть поэтической линии. Потом
the poetic line, that is, the words, were very important to the Greeks. Then, music evolved into a never-ending bravura roulade and took precedence over poetry. And we are presenting something in between. We left the roulades in place while maintaining the poetic line, which will be understandable to the audience. And the story of these characters will hopefully be clear to the viewers.
Суд зрителя.
Alla Simionishvili is an Italian theater director of Georgian origin and a coach in operatic singing. Orlando Furioso is not the first project that Alla has staged at the Kazakh theater. And of course, our audience will see Orlando through the director's perception.
Оперы в истории музыки названы
If we use quotes, operas are referred to as concerts in costumes throughout the history of music.
бесконечное количество часов. Что происходило, уже никто
It's because they used to last for countless hours. Nobody could comprehend what was going on there anymore. However, there was a structure of some sort. Therefore, we eliminated everything that wasn't needed to replicate this dramatic line. Thus, we reduced the number of arias. This is also due to the fact that the modern audience is unable to endure the music for a lengthy period. It is always important to keep in mind that we have a different pace of life and thought. The 6 to 8 hour operas that Wagner wrote are performed today for 2 or 3 evenings. One opera lasts 3 days. However, we cannot do that, so we only took what would be required to establish the beginning, the middle, and the end of our story.
нашей истории. Вот. Начало ее развития и заключение.
Alla highlighted another interesting character, almost on par with Orlando in her opinion, the faithful, heartless Alcina. Even the scene is designed accordingly as Alcina's office, a sorceress in the original, but an alchemist in this interpretation. In pursuit of eternal youth, Alcina seduces men and collects their hearts, feeding on their life energy and thereby postponing her own aging.
У нас великолепный режиссер Алла.
We are very happy that director Alla Simionishvili is here. She came from Italy with this idea, with this opera, and together with the conductors and other musicians, it's all been created now.
Вот сейчас это все создается. Естественно, мне Алла сразу сказала, что ты будешь...
Alla told me that I would play the role of Ruggiero. About a month before the rehearsals began, I started learning this opera and simultaneously began to try the role of this character, so to speak.
Параллельно начал на себя примерять, так скажем, лицо этого персонажа.
He's interesting. He's quite compliant. The thing is, he loves his wife, Bradamante, very much. He's faithful to her. He's a warrior, a man of honor, a courageous man, but he, like many others, falls under Alcina's spell.
Он, как и многие другие, попадает под чары Альчины.
Bradamante is another female character. Contrary to the laws of the genre, she is far from being sacrificial. She is also full of passions and a warrior's desire to defend what she believes belongs only to her. With a truly Italian temper, after feeling hurt by her unfaithful husband, she decides to direct all her turbulent emotions against the homewrecker.
Она переодевается в мужчину, она...
She wears men's clothes, goes to Alcina, and thus tries to expose her. And in my opinion, the most important thing in the final scene, where Alcina realizes that she is doomed, she has no choice but to die.
Она обличена, ей не что иное, как умереть. И это одна из самых, на мой взгляд, сложных сцен, потому что здесь мы...
This is one of the most difficult scenes for me because here we, including me as Ruggiero, kill her. And you know, even in theater, killing someone is very hard, even on stage.
Потому что когда идет перевоплощение, когда ты уже не ты,
Because when the transformation happens, when you are no longer you, with this thought you go through the whole opera. I would say this is a very challenging character for me.
те страсти, которые обуревают главных и второстепенных.
The passion that overwhelm the main and secondary characters, the love triangles that are created, always attract attention, because much of this takes place in real life. These events from those times still have a certain relevance.
Всегда имеют определенную актуальность.
It is amazing that the expression "all the world is a stage" works in both directions. Theater is an entire life. The performance on stage is just the tip of the iceberg. Hidden from the outside view is a whole army of people working to ensure that the encounter with art brings true enjoyment to the audience. Technical workers, seamstresses, prop masters, restoration craftsmen, and so on. All these people are like an orchestra backstage, with their own conductor, the set designer. The main task of both the director and the artist is to understand what the performance is about. Because Orlando Furioso can be made about Orlando, about the tragedy of Orlando, about the tragedy of Alcina, a person who does not want to accept the aging process, death, and does any treachery and crime just to preserve eternal youth. By the way, to some extent, this is quite relevant in our time when people do not reconcile with aging and the natural passage of time. The set design and these details, this beauty you see, is done very well by the theater's masters. It immerses us in this era. It may be another era, but it leads into a certain period of time and prepares both the audience and, of course, the actors emotionally.
Актерам, артистам.
It should be noted that the symbol of our performance is the heart. This can be seen as the heart of Orlando, encased in armor which we have on our poster. It can also be the heart as a symbol of energy that nourishes us, because from the hearts of the fallen, so to speak, Alcina feeds her youth and her life. She also has her own heart on her costume made of glass, like Murano glass, which is also a symbol at some point. There are moments when the heart of another victim is brought to her on a plate, and this heart is pulsing. It's very beautiful with sound effects. There is a heartbeat sound effect in rhythm with the pulsation of light and the change of light in the heart object. So I think the theme is interesting, relevant, played with intelligence and taste, and I believe everyone will enjoy it. The preparation was complicated by the fact that a small space, a chamber hall, was chosen for the theatrical performance. The peculiarities of production in a chamber hall consist of the fact that it resembles a film set rather than a theatrical stage, because the distance is only a few meters between the audience and the actors. We cannot afford to work in broad strokes, especially the very large Astana stage, where the distance between the audience and the proscenium is huge. Therefore, great efforts and emphasis are placed on refining details, on the precision of execution, and on the specifics of lighting. We have no trapdoors, no grates. Basically, everything happens openly on stage, and all the movement and change of scenery occurs on stage. And this, of course, is challenging. It seems that everyone involved in this unusual premiere is satisfied with the result. We are confident that the opera will be included in the repertoire of the Astana Opera, as not only was the premiere successful, but there are already agreements in place for a tour with this opera.
В будущем этот спектакль будет у нас в репертуаре, и я надеюсь, что очень часто.
In the future, I hope this performance will be on our repertoire and will be staged very often.
Они прочитали Ариосто, кто такой Орландо Фуриозо. Это просто.
I would like that future audiences who will visit us would read about who Orlando is. It will simply help.
Ариосто, это будет очень интересно смотреть. Это будет.
It will be very interesting to watch, and it will provide an opportunity to look deeper. I will try to do everything so that it feels very truthful, to be at a good level.
Как сказать, даже не знаю, чтобы это все было на хорошем уровне. Со своей стороны.